Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
I don't know, what it is that you're going through out there, but just know that you aren't alone in hurting. And sometimes, the excitement and joy all around you can even just amplify and make it feel that much harder. So go to Jesus with it, find your community, and know that you're not alone.
Hey, friend, you're listening to the AllMomDoes podcast, part of the Purposely Podcast Network, and I am your fearless host, Julie Lyles Carr. I don't know when you might be finding this episode. If you're a regular listener, you might be finding it right in the season in which it's intended. Maybe if you are doing a whole lot of binge listening because you are, cleaning out the garage, trying to figure out what color to paint your living room, whatever might be going on for you when you are binging all kinds of podcast content. I'm just glad you're here. And the reason I mention about the time of year is because this is an episode in which we're going to talk about some stuff that has to do with the Christmas season. But I want to encourage you, whenever you're finding this episode, we're going to talk about some things that are applicable all year round. Ways of doing things that your family might want to think about, ways of approaching certain things when it comes to the holiday season. So I want you to stay tuned. My guest today is Amanda Jass. Amanda, I am so thrilled you are here. We have navigated the technological challenges of trying to get connected. So thanks for hanging in there. Tell the listener where you live, what you do, all the things.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me, Julie, and for your gracious patience as I figured out all the technology things. I am Amanda, and I am a wife. I am a mom of 3 girls. They are 8 and under, and we live up north in Minnesota. So it's starting to turn pretty cold up here. Coming out of summer and early fall is absolutely lovely here. So it's not always a tundra in Minnesota. Yeah. It is beautiful. So that's where we reside. We have a little dog, so hopefully he is quiet during our conversation here. And then I am also a kind of an unlikely, I would say, writer, editor, and illustrator, and primarily in the Christian children's publishing space. And I love it.
Okay, listener, this is an opportunity for you to put some headphones on if you want to, because if you have some little listening ears, Amanda and I are going to chat about something when it comes to holiday season. And I don't necessarily want to have to speak in code about everything. If you're catching my drift, this is your chance. Okay. And here we go. Hopefully those headphones are on. So Amanda, one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about is you have a new book out called Discovering Christmas. We're going to get into that a little bit more. And as part of our celebrations, the way we build family traditions, the way that we approach the holidays, all that kind of stuff. One of the things that I've often heard parents talk about, and I know parents can take really different opinions on this, is what to do about Santa Claus and Jesus and all of the things. Because so often, as you know, Amanda, part of what makes the holidays really fun and exciting is all of the magic kind of fun stuff and reindeer and all these different stories. And yet at the same time, I know parents wrestle with, how much of that do we promote? How much do we not? I don't know necessarily, Amanda, that you and I have to figure that out for a parent, but I would love to hear your thoughts as someone who is in this space, who is helping families, who is so excited about Christmas. How do you handle the whole Santa Claus and Jesus conversation? What does your family do? And what are some tips that you can help provide for a parent who's like, I don't know what to do about this?
Yes. So this is a tricky conversation, Julie, and I'm glad you said it. I don't think we're going to come to any, here's the right way to do it. Here's all the answers, because I certainly don't have all the answers either. But I am happy to share kind of how we've navigated it in our household, as well as, like you said, some ideas for other families, because I know it can feel like it's a very emotionally charged thing for some people, the Santa versus no Santa. And I have friends kind of on both extremes of the sides, and I maybe fall somewhere closer-ish to the middle. I don't know. So, well, I guess you can decide when I tell you sort of how we handle it. But first, I can say, maybe I'll just share kind of what our family does. So, well, back to my own experience growing up. So, I found out that there was no Santa. So again, hopefully headphones are on. When I was 3 years old, it was very young. And, but my uncle dressed up like Santa Claus at our family get together because we had an extended family get together, we'd celebrate Santa. So my uncle showed up as Santa Claus and I knew it was my uncle. So I asked my dad afterwards, like, why is Uncle Rick Santa Claus? And he told me the real grown-up truth about Santa, and I went and told my mom. She wasn't thrilled.
Yeah. Dad probably had some points. He probably had some points get removed for that moment. Yeah.
He's like, well, I didn't want to lie to her. And she straight up asked me. So anyway, they did things a little differently with my sister, but then I got to play and enjoy all the Santa things with my little sister as she grew up. But I never remembered, and probably because I don't really remember believing. For me, I felt like there was still kind of that fun magic of Christmas, even without believing with my whole heart that Santa was a real person that came to our house. But like we would still, and I think some of it was because my little sister believed in Santa for longer, but also cousins and things. And throughout the years, we'd still put out cookies. We'd watch Christmas movies. Like the Santa Claus came out when I was, I think, kind of that early elementary school age, and it's still one of my favorite. I love the Santa Claus in that series, those movies. And so that's kind of like my personal background with it. So I didn't feel like I was missing out at all. But then I had heard from friends who were devastated when they found out that the Santa wasn't real, or that believed into like 6th, 7th grade and were kind of made fun of, and like, how could you not tell me, parents? And there's just lots of different viewpoints on that. So anyway, with our kids, what we've kind of decided to do is we still will talk about Santa, watch Santa types of movies, but we also have told our kids, when they've asked us that yes, Santa, it's a fun thing. It's a fun kind of character that we can have sort of in our imaginations. And so this idea that Santa is kind of like a character, like on some of the movies that they watch, like whether it's the Disney movies or different things. And then another thing that we have done that I would say can be helpful for parents, whether you and hopefully parents aren't hating me right now for not like letting my kids like believe in the magic Christmas. But again, we do Santa stuff. We'll set out cookies and things too. We still have fun with it. And but one thing that we've talked about with our kids is where kind of the legend of Santa Claus came from, and talk about St. Nicholas. And I think, again, even if your kids currently believe in Santa and you do the whole full-on Santa thing, I think something that could help kind of almost like bridge the gap and of the Santa Jesus conversation and show how Jesus actually like influenced St. Nicholas. So how that is because St. Nicholas, as far as we know, he was this is kind of a history lesson, but around in the like 4th century. And as far as we know, he was a Christian bishop. So he loved Jesus. And he lived his life in a way that modeled Jesus's love, his generosity, his kindness. There's all sorts of stories, and now it's grown into different legends. So again, it's hard to know what is accurate and what's legend, but stories about St. Nicholas and just his kindness and the ways he was generous and giving kids or these girls balls of gold and just all these different things. And so that is what over the years has led different cultures to, like in the UK, it's Father Christmas would be their Santa Claus, but has led these different cultures to kind of expand on this legend of who St. Nicholas was and almost like immortalize it. And so I think helping kids see the real person that inspired Santa Claus, again, that could lead into some tricky conversations. I'm not gonna lie. If your kids are um, do believe in a physical Santa Claus that is coming, but I think that can be really helpful. And here's actually this is a quote I found by he's a religion professor named Adam English, and I really liked this when I was just doing a little bit of research on Saint Nicholas, and it says. There are many saints who were intellectuals and scholars who influenced Christian thought. But here, speaking of St. Nicholas, here is the saint who influenced faith by his actions, by his life. And isn't that what we are called to do as followers of Jesus? So I think, I just think having that conversation and about how Santa originated, and again, there's different nuances to navigate that depending on how you celebrate Santa in your house. But just sharing about Saint Nicholas and that, yeah, as far as we know, he loved Jesus and he lived his life for Jesus. Jesus was his number one. So if his number one was Jesus, like how much more should we be making Jesus our number one? So
I love you unpacking that. That's really helpful. And for myself, it's interesting, Amanda, because I was raised in a certain lane of the faith that because we know that historically Jesus most likely was born in early fall, I wasn't raised in a church that really surrounded the Christmas experience with the birth of Jesus, because in that particular lane, it was thought, well, that's not really historically accurate. So it wasn't that we didn't celebrate the birth of Christ and all that Jesus has done for us, because we certainly did in the church in which I was raised, but there was not the same level of emphasis on the Christmas season around the birth of Christ. And so we absolutely did Santa Claus in my home of origin. I mean, it was a big, big deal. What was interesting was my parents had what I think was a really good approach. And, if you think about it in our culture today, it's not like you have to sit your kid down and say, hey, there's this thing called Santa Claus, and I want you to believe in it, and I want it to be this, and I want it to be that, and here's all the things that go with it. And you really don't have to. There's so much in the culture, if you will, around the Christmas holidays that really tells this Santa Claus kind of figure and tells the backstory. So I don't remember my parents ever sitting down and saying, here's this guy and he's got the hat and he's got the beard. We were watching all the claymation stuff with Rudolph and The Year Without a Santa Claus and all that kind of stuff. That's where we were getting all of our intel. And years later, I asked my mom, okay, now I'm having kids and I'm trying to decide. I don't want my kids to feel like I've lied to them about Santa Claus. I don't want them to feel like that somehow I have equated him to the reality of God, of Christ. I want to be really clear on what I'm doing here. And she said, well, let me ask you something. Is the fact that we, had Santa Claus as part of our celebration, has it impacted your relationship with God? And I was like, oh, well, no. Like I understood when I kind of figured things out and figured out part of it was just a story, when it came to Santa Claus, I didn't get it all twisted up in my mind. There may be other people who have a different experience, but I didn't. The other thing too that my folks did that we ended up really using in our household was they never really told us stuff when we would ask questions about Santa Claus. They would say, well, what do you think? Well, what have you heard? Well, so they were not really the Santa Claus authority, if that makes sense, which in retrospect, I realize allowed that trust to still be there in a lot of ways when it came to things spiritual. And the moment that we asked point blank, we got a direct answer. There was not this way of trying to mitigate and keep it going for longer. But until we asked the question, we were still going to all play along. We were still going to have fun with it. Now, I recognize that's not everyone's decision. And I do think it's something that parents have to decide for their families, for their own situation, for what they feel is right. We have extended family members who are choosing not to pursue that with their young children. And I respect that and I understand. But I love that you bring up St. Nicholas, because it was not until I was in my adult years that I really learned more about him. And in a way, the way that we allow his life to be honored in hopefully a proportional way to those things that we celebrate at the Christmas season, but to recognize that there was someone who lived his life because of how he was inspired by the gospel and what he did and how that influences a lot of the Christmas story that we tell forward. I think that's a really beautiful thing. I mean, it reminds me of how you can be in a secular setting and people are playing Christmas music that really is praise music about Jesus, and they sort of don't even completely realize. I think the same thing can happen with Santa Claus. So I really appreciate you unpacking that for us. Now, Amanda, when it comes to discovering Christmas and discovering Christmas with our families, one of the things that you and I talked about before we started recording the podcast today was Christmas can be a complicated time frame for people for a variety of reasons. We might have a listener who this is the first Christmas that she's celebrating since her divorce became final, and she's trying to figure out co-parenting this year. For some people, it's that they had something really difficult happen. For others, it's that they may be separated from family at this point. There may be an issue with extended family, and they're not going to be able to have the holidays together. When we talk about discovering and really celebrating Christmas at its core, what do we do when the holidays are painful and we're trying to rewrite what that looks like for our own kids, for our own relationship? Talk us through that. What have you learned as you have written more deeply into the Christmas season?
I've been there. If any of you out there are almost dreading the Christmas season and Christmas coming up, like I have absolutely been there as well. And so I get it. And it can be really hard because it's this supposed to be this season that's just so filled with wonder and joy, and you're feeling anything but that. You're feeling anything but celebrating. You're so filled with the sorrow, whatever is going on around you. And so I think one, it's just to realize like you're not alone in feeling that, and it's okay. It's okay that you're not that excited to celebrate Christmas this year. It's okay. I think we can hold such guilt for something like that, especially when you think of as Christmas. And I love what you were saying earlier about like, because yes, I love like kind of myth busting some of the different things in the Christmas story.
Right, right.
The Jesus's birth, then well, it's when we celebrate Jesus's birth, but it's probably not very close to when he was actually born. And anyway, but yes, as we're going into Christmas, and it's like it's this time that we're supposed to be celebrating our Savior coming to earth. We can still do that from a place where we are feeling that hurt, that grief. We don't have to be happy and smiley and all the things to come to Jesus, like to come around. We know that. And also hopefully we don't have to pretend that the happiness and yes, we have joy. We can still have joy. I think that's another thing. We still have joy because of Jesus, even when we're experiencing that grief. But yes, we don't have to kind of put on the happy face necessarily. Or we definitely don't have to do that to come to Jesus. We can come to him fully as we are. And like, hey, I know this is a season of celebrating you, Jesus, but I'm having a really hard time, and just being real about that, and being real about that to an extent with your family or your kids, depending on your kids' ages. Just doing it in an age-appropriate way, of course, and thinking through that where they're at developmentally. But being able to share about that, or share with another family member or a friend about what you're going through, so you're not feeling so alone. So going to God with it, going to someone else, because another thing that is so beautiful about the Christmas season, but can also make it feel that much harder, is it's a season of community. It's coming together. Right. And if you are feeling like you are isolated from your community, whether there's conflict going on or it's maybe self-inflicted because of things you're just not wanting to open up, that can be really hard. So it's that just finding even those one or two people that you can open up with, be real with, and have that sense of community, because God created us for community. We are relational beings. We're created to have a relationship with God and a relationship with the people around us. So those would be a couple things that I would recommend. But again, just that not letting yourself as a mom, as a human, just feel guilt about, like, I remember it was so like the Christmas after my dad died over 10 years ago now. And I remember that Christmas, it was before we had kids. But I was so relieved when Christmas was over. I remember being on the drive home, just feeling like, because I think, and obviously my whole family we were going through the same thing, but still you don't want to be the depressing person on Christmas. And I don't know. So still it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to try to hold it together for the most part. But just, I remember telling my husband on the way home, I'm just glad Christmas is done. And it was just, I've loved Christmas growing up, have so many great memories. And that's probably why it's that much harder though, too, having my dad, who's also just a pillar of faith in my life, but be gone. But then, yeah. And then in the next years, we were going through infertility. So, I mean, still missing my dad, but then also like all my friends are posting pictures with their little babies and we don't have one. And, to sit and have presents by the Christmas tree. So I don't know, what it is that you're going through out there, but just know that you aren't alone in hurting. And sometimes, the excitement and joy all around you can even just amplify and make it feel that much harder. So go to Jesus with it, find your community, and know that you're not alone.
Thank you to our sponsor, George Fox University. George Fox University is unique. It is a Christ-centered, student-focused university where your student is going to be appreciated for the individual they are, the learning style, and the goals that they have, while also keeping focus on their relationship with Christ. I want you to go check it out at georgefox.edu. Again, that's georgefox.edu. Thanks so much for being our sponsor, George Fox. You want to make a difference in your community. You love your city, and you can see the impact of homelessness and unemployment. What can you do? Well, that's why I want you to know about Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. Seattle's Union Gospel Mission started 92 years ago, and today they operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, helping to provide 360-degree care for thousands of the homeless throughout the greater Seattle area. I think their approach to all of this is so beautiful. It's highly relational. They address the root causes and the cycle of homelessness, and they're able to do that with this beautiful heart posture of letting people know that no matter what their circumstances or their history, that they are loved and cared for, both by God and by Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. Change is possible. Hope is possible. They have faith-based recovery programs that help people overcome homelessness and addiction. And if you want to hear more about some of those stories, you can actually go to ugm.org/changed lives. That's a great resource for seeing some of the work that goes on with Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. And there are plenty of ways for you to get involved this year and to help take action. You can help serve a meal, teach a class, you can deliver a blanket, you can bring donated items, or there are plenty of other volunteer opportunities. Your time really helps and really matters when it comes to serving the homeless in our community. So be sure to check out ugm.org. That's ugm.org, stands for Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. You're going to be inspired. You're going to find ways to volunteer and to donate, and you too can help make a difference with Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. I like that word amplify, because I do think there's an amplifying feature of Christmas that can really be challenging in certain seasons. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves as moms and on ourselves as community members when it comes to the Christmas season. I know for myself, Amanda, I definitely have also seen through the years that the speed at which we're sort of expected to live life during the Christmas season does not correlate well to a time of reflection, a time of celebration of being together. Instead, it is run from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And, for some reason, it's even permeated in a way that feels kind of new to me, except now it's not all that new based on the ages and stages of where my kids have been through the years. But I don't remember as a kid the number of Christmas parties and Christmas gatherings based on all of my extracurricular activities when I was a kid. I do recall it feeling like the Christmas season was a time where things got a little quieter. We spent more time together as a family. We would watch all the claymation because, you had to be there that night at that time. It wasn't streaming. You had to really commit, right? And, today when I look at all of the things, it's everything from the Christmas party for the book club to the Christmas brunch for the dance school for the girls to the this, the that. I mean, it is just jam packed starting out the gates of Thanksgiving. So how can we do a little bit of an inventory, an audit, and say, okay, what really needs to be in this season? And what is an invitation maybe that we just need to, respectfully, but also non-apologetically turn down?
Yeah. So, well, I think, and I absolutely agree with you on how crazy and overwhelming the Christmas season can be. And yeah, it just seems like it continues to get crazier. It's how many parties can we add? How many more decorations can I fit in here to make the space look even better? So I know from experience as we get closer to Christmas how easy it is to get sucked into all of that and overwhelmed with all the things to do and to see and to smell and to hear and to taste, right? We want to experience it all. And I think then as moms, maybe even more accurately is yes, we want to experience it, but we want our kids to experience it and we don't want them to miss out on anything, right? And so I know that personally to be true for myself and so many others. And then the other thing that I know is true for me is how easy, and I used to work in children's ministry. So as I say this, keep that in mind. It's how easy it is for the real reason, the most special reason that we celebrate Christmas, which is, of course, the birth of our Savior, how easy it is for that to get lost in the mix of all the holiday hustle,
Right.
all the things. And so I come into this conversation with a lot of hopefully grace and understanding because yes, I've been there and I'm still there sometimes. I haven't gotten it all figured out yet. But I think when a lot of times when we have these conversations as moms or as when I'm talking to the kids' mom friends at school or church or wherever, is I think a lot of us, myself included, is with the best of intentions, we will try to focus on addressing that first thing, the overwhelm that we're feeling, this all the many activities, how do we get things off the calendar? And which I think that is a good thing. We want to try to minimize holiday stress, but something that I've realized, at least for myself, is that when I try to address that first of okay, what can I get rid of? What can I focus on? Is then I end up focusing more on what I can't or shouldn't do. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, but then but we're missing out, or my kids are missing out. I kind of go to that because I'm so focused on that. It's almost like this idea of when let's say you're trying to limit ice cream, not eat as much ice cream. And you're thinking about, okay, I usually have a bowl of ice cream every night, but I'm not going to have ice cream tonight. I'm not going to have ice cream next night. What are you thinking about once you get
Ice
to
cream.
7 p.m.? You're thinking about ice cream. I want my bowl of ice cream. But if instead of thinking this mindset of okay, I can't have ice cream, I can't eat that bowl of ice cream, what if instead you thought about the good whole foods and maybe a little bit of a still added sweet treat that you can have? So for me, maybe this sounds gross to other people, but I love a banana. I also love ice cream. So again, I'm speaking from experience here, but a banana with peanut butter and chocolate chips. So it's still sweet, it's still good. But if you think about, ooh, I'm excited to have that. That sounds great. And then you get your fill of that, then the ice cream, 9 times out of 10, I mean, still once in a while I want the ice cream, but not always, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not even thinking about the ice cream. I don't even care. I don't feel like I'm missing out. So I think, so all of that to say, kind of that analogy there, is to say when we put our focus on how do we actually put Christ first? Because even if we don't feel necessarily that's what we want, because these other things are more like quick fixes, quick hits of dopamine, all that. But we know and can recognize in our hearts at the deepest level, like, yes, I want to focus on Jesus. I want my family to focus on Jesus. When we do that and find even small ways to, how can I put Jesus first in this Christmas season and in every season. But when I do that, the other things I think naturally have a way to begin to fall into their proper place. And because when we do that, when we're spending time with Jesus, when we're learning about him, when we're praying, when we're having time as a family and talking about Jesus and just getting into fun, interesting conversations and doing simple, kind of silly, fun activities together, what happens is we are less likely to buy into the lies that we need to go to every single party to be happy, that our kids need to do that. Because we're seeing like, oh, we're having this, like, we're doing this fun activity. We're drinking hot chocolate and lighting an Advent candle and like having this conversation, having so much fun. And or like, I need to have the Pinterest perfect decor. That again, that lie that we need to be keeping up with everybody, or I absolutely have to bake the 12th batch of Christmas cookies for the Christmas cookie swap. Like any of those things, like it helps when we're putting the proper things in the proper order, when we're putting Jesus first, it just will naturally, I think, flow down. And not that doesn't mean we don't have to, that it's not helpful to look through our calendar or to say, to have a conversation about, like, you know what, I don't think we're going to do Christmas cards this year. And we've had years where we don't do Christmas cards. And I still haven't decided yet about this year, where I'm hoping by the time this airs, hopefully I've made a decision. But so there are some really practical things like that I think can be really helpful. But before maybe like going into those, before looking at the calendar, what if you spent some time with Jesus, read through the Christmas story or the real Christmas story, or just spent some time in prayer and like, God, what do you want this Advent season, this Christmas season to look like for our family? And then after that, then going through the calendar, then having those conversations.
I love that. I think it's a great way of filtering through and making determinations about how we're going to spend our time at the holidays, and to really make sure we're keeping that focus on the birth of Christ central. Now, you have a new book out called Discovering Christmas, which is a way to walk through the Advent season with your family with all kinds of fun ideas and activities and thoughts. So give me a quick snapshot of what the reader can expect when they take a look at Discovering Christmas.
Yes. So, Discovering Christmas, it is a 25-day Advent devotional with activities for kids. And I will say that with this devotional, I can kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts a little bit too. But the reason why I wrote this was because several years ago, after our third little girl was born, I was in a place where I was extremely overwhelmed as the holidays approach. Like, just kind of like what we were just talking about, Julie. Like,
Right.
I was so overwhelmed. I needed some kind of like helpful rhythm, something to tether me, to kind of ground me. Because everything, it's just the babies, the toddlers, everything. And then all the activities, I just was so overwhelmed. So I decided I wanted to be intentional with my kids and do just one super simple activity each day of Advent. We had gotten a little Advent calendar. So I'm like, okay, I'll write down a little activity like the night before or morning of, because, sometimes that's just life. But, and then our kids can open up the little Advent door and see the activity that we're going to do. Sometimes they were very clearly, like reading from the Bible, reading from the Christmas story. Sometimes they were more fun about connecting as a family. But the goal, the whole idea was that I wanted these activities to bring us together as a family and to remind us about the real reason why we celebrate Advent. And I also wanted to make sure they were very simple because, again, I was an overwhelmed mom. And so what ended up happening, though, was this super simple rhythm with some of these activities. They'd maybe take 5 minutes. but it helped me so much. Like my mental health improved and just my connection with my girls. And it really transformed that season for me. And so that led to eventually creating a resource, a printable, like small printable resource that led to eventually now this Discovering Christmas devotional, because I know how easy it is to get caught up in the craziness of the holidays. And so I also say that with this devotional, my goal, yes, it's focused on Jesus and the real reason why we celebrate Christmas. But my goal is not to like get families to abandon their beloved Christmas traditions, to abandon the Santa traditions or the looking at lights or things like that at all. In fact, some of those, I will say the book doesn't directly mention Santa or St. Nicholas or anything like that, but a lot of those different types of Christmas traditions are talked about in the book and are even woven into some of the activities in the book, but incorporated to tie into the story in light of the Christmas story as well. So looking at Christmas lights is one of the activities, but in an added idea as you talk about how Jesus is the light of the world, because that's the topic for that day's devotion. But yes, it's absolutely, I don't want families to abandon their traditions. And again, these activities probably will incorporate some traditions that families already have. But my prayer is that what this book will do is help families bring Christ to the center of all that they do. So to do the things that they love and do things that are fun, like these activities too, I want them to be fun and engaging for kids. Like one of my favorite ones, it's more geared toward like the younger side of kids, but it's it's setting up a little nativity scene in your own home. So just like making a little fort. Our kids love to make forts. Bring out the chairs, the blankets, grab a laundry basket for the manger. Like get the stuffies out and for the animals around nature, and then do a little Christmas gift. We still do that, and our girls are getting older now, but or not that much older, but that's such a fun thing. Or something simple like setting out a blanket in front of the Christmas tree and playing a game together as a family, or having a little picnic. Just simple, fun things. So those are some of the activity ideas. And then also throughout their scripture, there are prayers each day in the 25 days. There are conversation prompts. And the devotionals, I'll also mention, they're written in a very everyday language. So my hope is that yes, families, kids who have heard the Christmas story about Jesus multiple times since they've been born will love this devotional and learn from it, but also that it is an easy devotional for families to pick up that are relatively new to the faith. Like it doesn't use, like I try to avoid a lot of the Christianese, those kinds of things and that language, and have it be very approachable for those families that are new to the story of Jesus and just trying to introduce that to their kids and aren't really sure where to start.
What a great, great resource. And I'm so glad to have your wisdom, your insight on all different kinds of things Christmas, whether that is from how you're celebrating, who you're making part of those celebrations, to when Christmas is hard. And what a great resource in Discovering Christmas. Where can the listener go to connect with you, find the book, all the things?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, which is Amanda K. Jass, and Jass is Jass as in Sam, S as in Sam, and amandakjass.com. And you can find links to my main place, social media-wise, that I'm active is Instagram. So I'm Amanda K. Jass on Instagram, but there's links to that on my website, as well as some of my other resources and things that I do. A link to get the book. It's available where books are sold, and the devotional. So they can go on there and learn all the things.
Well, congrats to you. So exciting. And Amanda, thanks again for taking time to help get us even more in the holiday spirit and remind us on where we need to focus. Thanks so much.
Yes, thanks so much, Julie.
All right, listener, you know what to do. Over to those show notes. Rebecca will have all those links for you where you can find out more about Amanda, more about the devotional, all the great resources that she has. Be sure and check out allmomdoes.com. And hey, would you do a solid for me? We love it when you grab the link from the show and share it. That is just so helpful for getting the word out about the great information and content that you are experiencing here. Hey, come see me too. I'm Julie Lyles Carr, all the places, and I love hanging out on Instagram. So come see me over there. And I want to hear from you. What are the topics? What are the questions you have when it comes to this season of life for you as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, all the things. And I will see you next time on the All Mom Does podcast.